My name is Dana Klein, and I'm Vice President in charge of Sales Strategy and Planning. We've been using Highspot for over 5 years. And one of the things we love about it is that it's one place where everybody goes. And as we've, in the past, used another firm for like training and some coaching, we decided that the easier thing to do is have a single platform. Flat, easy, one sign in, and you're off to the races. The way we think about onboarding as somebody comes in, and we're a relatively small firm, relatively flat, we don't have a lot of layers and things like that. Our product set is fairly sophisticated. So what we use this for is we do a lot of videos and a lot of decks and interviews, and we're going to put all of those in that training and coaching to give people a sense of, what the product set looks like. We typically hire people that know how to sell. That's not a problem. It's really understanding how our products work, where they fit. We're in financial services, so we think about it in terms of where do our products fit within, let's say, somebody's portfolio. And so it's really important for our reps to understand how those things work. The way we use Highspot is for a lot of pitches. Everything you do, first of all, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. One of the things we measure for our firm, for our sales team is, activity, not just did they bring money in, but what was the activity that led to bringing that money in? So you get a sense of some ROI. What we're looking to do is kind of bring down that number of touches. And the reality is you can only control but so much of that. But we find that with Highspot, we can see who's touching what. Are we sending something out? They don't open it. Well, what does that tell you? But at the same time, understand what you want to follow up with. One of the things that's really important to understand about Highspot, really for anybody, is that it is a very big, deep iceberg. And really, we've only touched the very tip. We've used it for a number of years, and what we're finding is that there's more and more layers of things that we could take advantage of, that we have to continue to look to find those things and to do those things and work with our consultant. She brings us a lot of ideas. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And it's really about sort of how do we build that out? So when we talk about what are we doing around pitch styles, which is something, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't know what it was. But I built one out, and I think that it's something that is going to have a lot of benefit. It's really nothing more than a simple microsite, but it's something where I can build one of those for every one of our sales team, and they can have their own little microsite with their content, and then they can add the content as a follow-up for the last meeting that they had. When I think about using Highspot to deepen a relationship, what we really find is that being able to sort of target the content that we want to send, let's say as a follow-up to a meeting or as an introduction for a meeting, it's really about being able to know if we send them something, what pages did they look at, right? And then if they did, where did they stop? Where did they spend more time? And that's really when they go to follow-up, that becomes much more critical. Here's something that's very unique to financial services that Highspot brings to the table. And that is that with some new, both SEC, FINRA, and other regulations that have come down the pike, it's very important for our compliance department to be able to know, for example, what was pitched out, who it was pitched to, and when it was pitched out. There's some regulations about following up with performance information within a year of when it was originally sent out. You have to update it. So our compliance department can use some pre-built tools that we built out for them, where they can go in, generate a list in Highspot through the analytics. It's custom built for them. It gives them exactly what they want. They might change the time parameters or something like that. They generate it, dump it into, let's say, a spreadsheet, and then now they know exactly who they need to follow up with to stay within compliance. These things, I think, for them, more and more are going to become very important. And I think it's really important to understand that as you talk about Highspot within the organization, it's really important to include them in almost everything you do. Like, we're starting to talk about templates. And the first thing is, well, we have to approve everything that you put in writing. So if it goes to more than 20 people, or 25, if it goes to more than 25 people, it's considered advertising. They have to review it. So again, we get compliance involved from the beginning so they understand what the capabilities are, because then they come back and say, hey, could you do this? Could you do that? And absolutely the answer is yes. I haven't had a single no yet. Years ago, it was, essentially almost everything was just on a server, right, in folders. So you went to a folder for a particular product set and you pulled out what you wanted. It was a PDF, and you put it on an email. That was typically how we did it. We needed to find something that we could use for, basically content management. We went through a fairly elaborate review and ultimately settled on Highspot. And we settled on Highspot because of the easy use, cost, frankly, among other things. But ultimately, this is where everything sits, and it's a lot more usable than anything we had in the past. The evolution of our sales teams and how we engage with clients has really changed since the pandemic. We went from, we would go to your office, we'd meet with you, we'd show you our products. We would usually, most of our sales reps would print off something and walk you through it, across from you at your desk. Very, person to person, direct selling, and that changed, and it changed overnight. And the one thing we did was we adopted a whole virtual process. So we started using Zoom. We started really creating a lot more webinars and a lot more engagement, in some kind of virtual. And I think at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, that's the future. The future is not going to be as much direct contact. Our people want to do it, but there's only so many people you can meet on a golf course. And the reality is that it's very hard to meet people in an office today in our business. And that's probably not going to change all that much for we don't know how long. So, we're really trying to use Highspot more and more virtually. That's why I'm really excited about trying to use like the pitch styles, because I can create that virtual little place that each sales team can use, at least as a way to start to interact with people. They could, get done with a meeting and then send them their sort of their mini site, if you will, with the content that follows up on today's meeting with a simple message. For anybody, considering Highspot, they're just getting used to it. Like, first of all, you got to do your homework. What works for us doesn't always work for everybody else. But what we found is that by looking through what the alternatives are and identifying what are our needs, and that's kind of how we did it. So I would say, one, identify your needs. How much do you need? We looked at some great products from some competitors, but it had a lot more than we could ever use. And when I talk to peers in the industry that are using it, I'd be like, well, do you use it? Well, we use about 80% of it. Well, if that's the case, then maybe you don't need that. So you really got to figure out, what are you going to use? Like I talked about, we were each using the tip of the iceberg. This provided everything we needed at the time, but we didn't know what else we could use. So it's also trying to figure out, well, what would you want to be doing 2, 3, 4 years from now? What do you envision? And does Highspot meet that for you? But that's really, to me, it's trying to figure out what's at the horizon, not just what's in front of your nose today. And then from there, find the most flexible platform. Here's the 3 things that if I could talk to anybody else in financial services, I'd say you want to look at. Number 1, is it something that your Salesforce is going to use? What are you using now, and how would this make this better? Okay? If it's not, well, move on. The other thing you want to look at is, how am I going to get this engaged? You have to have buy-in across the firm. It can't just be that a couple of salespeople want to do this, or it can't just be that sales managers want to use this. It's got to really be across multiple areas of the firm, because if not, then it's very difficult to get everything in place. And then finally, you really do want to be involved with compliance, because they really are the ones who need to be comfortable with what you're trying to do, because there's a lot of flexibility within Highspot, And they have to understand, where does the governance go? What can you say? What can't you say? What needs to be pre-approved? What doesn't? You really need to bring them in early, so it's much easier to integrate this into the whole sales process that you want going forward. First of all, totally integrate. We have a rule. If it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. That's the first thing. So if somebody's going to pitch something, relate it. If you relate it, it's in Salesforce. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to go back in. So that was initially like how we got people doing Highspot, right? Over and over again. So in addition to that, what we're starting to do now is looking at, okay, how else can we integrate this into Salesforce? How do we use it around the sales funnel? What are the opportunities that people are identifying? We're starting to look at generating lists out of Salesforce that would then go into, let's say, an email to, a dozen people or even more. These would be pre-approved, templated emails. We could send them out to hundreds of people with some basic content from Salesforce, like assets that an advisor may have. And we can make it specific to them. We can customize the email, and it will relate right back into that Salesforce contact. So it's all good. It's everything, really, because it's the CRM. If you don't know who your contacts are, then what do you know? You know nothing, right? So Salesforce has become, really, as much as anything, it is like the main place for information about every client, what activities we've had with them, have we sent them, a pitch, or have we met with them? That becomes huge. And then we can go back into Salesforce and we run, activity reports every week, where everyone in our sales team is basically measured by the types of activities, whether they're emails or meetings or, Zooms, or are they using our resources? That's measured and sent out to the sales team every single week. Highspot it's like central to what we do. Because without content, we have nothing. We're selling intangibles. Being able to display your product in a meaningful way. Now, some of that's on marketing, but some of that's being able to get it to people just in time when they need it. And they can get it right from Highspot. And then we can get the engagement. Like, did the guy open the email? Then what did they do? Did they open it? Did they look at it? Did they, what happened? And that becomes really critical. And, one of the things we find is that we can't use a lot of these big, like, email systems like Pardot or HubSpot, because it gets blocked by the firewall at our firms. So we have to send emails to a large number of our potential clients, if you will. It has to be a direct email. So Highspot, again, becomes central to sending those things out, adding the content and moving along. The thing I like most about Highspot is that it's the core of our organization in terms of content, right? But it's not just content, it's understanding how that content is being used and how our customers are engaging with it.